starts populating all these pictures.
Yes.
And it's just 10 people, 20 people. This is a new Zoom feature,
Okay.
which is good because
Yeah,
they
it's good.
make sure that people know. All right, very good. Well, I see Mary in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Nice to see you. Oh, and Mary also. This is great, seeing so many folks from all around the country tonight. Thanks for joining us. It'll be just a couple of minutes. I am delighted to say, for any number of reasons, that I am actually seated next to the amazing Christine Carbo. Just to be able to be in her presence is great in general, but this is our first book club in a long, long time where we've actually been able to sit and be in community with each other. So it's really terrific. And to be able then to extend that to a larger group that as I look at the crowd and we get to see kind of a big set of tiles and to see, Lana Batts in Lakeside and Bill from Annandale, New Jersey, and Gina Bridgman from Scottsdale, Arizona, Lisa from Houston, Carl and Candy, as always, from Whitefish, Janet Brandt from Missouri. It's really terrific just to see people from all over. So please do use the chat feature. Tell us where you're from. We like to take a kind of an addition of how many states we get represented. Dean from Lakeside, it was great to hike with you yesterday on the McDonald Creek Trail.
Indeed.
Yeah, that was an awesome outing, wasn't it, Dean?
Excellent.
As we're getting settled, I'll tell you a little bit about that. We did a partnership with the Hockaday Museum. The Hockaday Museum has 50 plein air painters painting in the park over this week. And we hiked people to those painters while they were painting. So
nice.
These are called Hockaday hikes. And yesterday's hike was on McDonald Creek to see Ken Yaris paint. And the picture that he was painting will be available at the Hockaday starting on Saturday.
Wow.
Their show opens on Saturday. So if you are local, or they have them online as well, and you're interested in plein air painting from Glacier, it's really a great opportunity to check out what's going on at the Hockaday. Starts on Saturday, and they both will have an open house then, and also online. It'll be there as well. So
that sounds really nice.
All right, so it looks like we have lots of chat going on already, and so let's go ahead and get started. As always, I'm Doug Mitchell, and I have the great privilege of being the Executive Director of the Glacier National Park Conservancy.
Yeah, I heard you. I'll come and get a plate, Lon.
Okay, this is the joy of Zoom as we learn whose dinner time it is, which is great. And I am joined tonight by three of my colleagues, Emily Evans, Jill Bridgman, and one of our newest colleagues, Sean, here from Butte, America, just arrived up to the Columbia Falls area. So welcome to them and thanks for their help. We would not be able to have the technical capabilities without Emily tonight, and Jill will be, as always, kind of curating the chat feature. Feel free to use the chat feature to ask questions. We're really hoping that tonight is going to be a great back and forth as we talk about this book, Mortal Fall, which is the second time, Christine, that you have been generous enough to share your time with us here at the book club. So thank you for coming back.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This is such a treat to join you guys. Yeah.
It's amazing to think about all of the assets we have in the Flathead Valley. And I came to know you before I moved full-time back to the Flathead Valley. Julie grew up here. We basically raised our boys in Helena, but also at the park. And I came to know Christine when I was writing book reviews for the Montana Magazine. And I will tell you what I told her. I was super nervous to call this famous author and ask to do an interview. And she was gracious then, and has been so gracious and so supportive of the work we do at the Glacier Conservancy ever since. You helped us launch this book club onto its success. We had 73 people registered for tonight. And it's great to come back and talk about book 2 of 4, where we get to learn a little bit more about Monty.
Yeah. I was going to say, you shouldn't have been nervous to talk to me. Did you know, have I told you this, that I actually went to prom or something with Julie's younger brother, Doug?
Okay, this is good information.
Yes.
This is very
Or
helpful.
maybe it was a homecoming. It was a long time ago.
So is there a
but,
corsage
yeah.
crushed somewhere in between wax paper that I need to know about?
No, but probably. Probably at the time there was.
Oh, that's funny. That's
Yeah.
terrific. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things we've talked about this a little bit, but one of the things that a lot of fiction writers will give you their seminal character, right? So you have your Bosches and that kind of thing. You kind of help us emerge from one book to the other. We get introduced in one book,
That's right.
and then in the next book, we get to learn more about that. So you introduced us to Monty in the first book, and now he becomes a major player
Right.
in this book. How did you think about doing that?
So, yeah, so Monty was a side character in The Wild Inside, which I actually have here, which was this first book, which we discussed in book club. And I felt like in The Wild Inside that I played completely through the character arc of Ted, who was the main character in that book. And so it didn't feel right to continue on with Ted. I mean, I did have gotten a lot of emails over the years about like, are you going to bring him back? We'd really like to see him. So people do like to stick with one character. But I really felt like I played through his emotional arc and was at a stopping point with him. And I suppose I could figure out more stuff to do with him at some point in the future if I really wanted to, but at that time, I didn't want to. I wanted to start with another character, but I wanted to have a story that still, I was done with the character, but it wasn't done with the place, because I love Glacier Park and the surrounding area. And this is the place that I wanted to set my stories in. And so it made sense to me to just pluck Monty and pull him forward. And I kind of liked him anyway, a lot in the first book. And I wanted to spend more time with him. And so my formula was like, well, I'll have an ensemble series where the universe is the same, the location is the same, maybe even some of the cast of characters, but not always, people come in and out, but that I could pluck side characters and kind of bring them forward as you get introduced to them. And that formula was really great for me, because I do like to play fully through the character arc of my people, and that formula allows me to do that. But I did like Monty so much, and I realized that some of you readers may have not liked, it's subjective. Some readers
Sure.
like them, some don't. Some like Ted, some didn't. But I really liked Monty, and so I wasn't even done with him. Even though I thought I would completely play through his character arc, I wasn't quite done with him at the end of Mortal Fall. And some of you may have questions. I mean, we could even discuss like whether anybody was aggravated or frustrated or irritated with the fact that I didn't solve that back mystery in Mortal Fall, the mystery about Nathan Fairway. And so, yeah, and so I wasn't done with him. So
yeah, and he's not a simple character either. This is a complicated guy.
Yeah.
Right. Complicated relationship with his significant other, complicated relationship with his brother, complicated childhood.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you grabbed onto an easy character either. He did need a lot of explaining.
Yeah, and which might be part of the reason I wasn't finished with him and brought him forward into the book that comes after that.
So
Just not as
we
fully.
want this to be a really good kind of vibrant discussion. So I'm hoping that people will populate the chat feature and or just unmute yourself and talk about it with us, because we have the access to the writer here. So let's use that opportunity to have this discussion, and she wants to hear feedback and ideas. I'll put a couple of other thought projects out there for people, and don't make me call on you, but I will. So we talked a little bit about, so who would play some of these characters in the movie, right? I've heard a lot of suggestions. In fact, I think these would be great movies. So, who should play Monty? Who should play Adam? Who should play Laura? Who should play Gretchen in these movies? So that's something to think about. And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to ask a difficult question to our guests today, which is, there's kind of a new thing that appears to be happening in the fiction world, which is that famous writers in their own right, like James Patterson, who has a number of books with recurring characters, are co-opting, in his case, Bill Clinton to be a co-author. And Louise Penny, also in the mystery genre, and one of my wife's favorites, is doing a book with Hillary Clinton. So,
Who
Madam
what?
Carbo, if you were able to give us some idea of who you might try and call on the phone and say, hey, let's do a book together.
And it would be somebody outside the field of,
Yeah, somebody in a different field
Mystery
who has
realm.
some prominence, who people might say, oh, that's an interesting sidelight for X person.
yeah. Well, I'm thinking that there are two issues with this, and I've thought about this a little bit. And because he did email me and say, I've got, just heads up, I've got one question for you that you might want to think about. And I have thought about it a lot. And it's not an easy answer, because thinking of people who would stimulate your mind and you'd have fun working with and would be creative might be different from like somebody who's just going to sell a lot of books. And, you know, it's kind of a phenomenon. I think it's been a phenomenon to co-opt, you like clothing brands have been doing it honestly forever.
Right.
Perfume.
Perfume.
I mean, they've been
Right.
co-opting athletes and
Right.
actors and Hollywood types and for a very long time, because that sells products. So I'm assuming that's what's going on in the book world, that Louise Penny is going to sell a lot of books by having Hillary Clinton on there, and obviously the Bill Clinton with
Right.
Patterson. So I would like to sell a lot of books. And so two people that would sell a lot of books, it would be Michelle Obama, who actually did write a book, and it was like the
Yeah.
best-selling book of all time, her memoir. And also Reese Witherspoon would sell a lot of books. And not only that, she would probably get these books made into series. So that
And
those
she's
are
an
my
authentic
answers
bookophile.
in terms
She's,
of,
she's an authentic bookophile as well, Reese Witherspoon. So
Yeah.
that would
Yeah.
have some real credit. And Obama, as you say, Michelle, is
she does have
is
the
an
book
author in her
club.
own
Yes.
yeah.
And Oprah has the book club, and but so that's my money and my exposure, prominence, money answer. My have fun, do something intellectual and fun with somebody. I mean, not that they wouldn't be, they'd probably be a blast, honestly, all those people, but
Right.
it would be you, Doug. We could write some plot lines for Glacier Park.
There you go. Well, we do know a little bit about Glacier Park, that's for sure. But yeah, well, that's I'm way down here and Christine's way up here, but that's very nice of you. Well, if anybody else has any ideas, I was thinking maybe like Johnny Depp or Matt Damon or something like that. Maybe the actors need to get in this, like Reese,
Yes.
to get in this business. So super interesting. Well, I want to talk a little bit about, and maybe people want to feed into this a little bit. I want to go back to this idea of complicated characters and complicated kind of life backstories. Some of this was kind of hard to think about. You have a youth camp that it has some challenging backstory to it that's a little bit hard to read about, and how does an author get to that issue of selling books? That might not be the easiest decision in selling books, to tackle that kind of an issue, or tackle an issue about a relationship that's trying to decide, do we have kids, do we not have kids, and does that end the relationship? How, as an author, do you think about that, and how do you make that decision to really dive into those complicated topics?
Well, for me, the most interesting suspense novels and mysteries that I read are the ones where I'm very invested in the emotional stakes of the main character, the person, whether it's a detective or a cop or a sleuth or whoever is the main character. I feel like I enjoy them so much more if I feel like I'm wrapped into their personal world, as well as just solving the mystery. And sometimes it's even better when their personal stuff isn't just personal alone, but also the mystery, the case they're working on, brings up more stuff about that. Sometimes that works and you can really find the right, how that jives really well. And sometimes you can't find the right mix, but you still need personal problems for that. I mean, you still have to get your reader invested in your character on a personal level. Sometimes that's history, sometimes it's what's going on currently in their relationships, you know, like Harry Bosch and what's going on with his daughter and his ex-wife and, you know, this kind of stuff. Or sometimes it's a past history that haunts somebody. And I've played with all of those things, especially the past history, because I really feel that what happens when you're young has a big impact on your psyche and your psychology when you're older. And in fact, I think there's debate about who said this. People say that Michael Connelly actually didn't come up with it, but it's attributed to him, and that it was really E.L. Doctorow who said this, has this quote, and I'm going to butcher the quote because I don't know how it goes exactly, but it goes something to the effect of, it's not how the detective works the case, it's how the case works the detective that's interesting. And so that's kind of, for me, a guidepost with this, like what is it about the mystery in the case and the situation that person's investigating that brings stuff up for them psychologically.
That's super
And
interesting.
that makes the writing more fun for me. And when I say fun, I mean, yeah, even hard stuff to read or write is just, it's more interesting to me.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And clearly this particular case takes a lot of twists and turns, and I don't think I was alone in not figuring it out until the last many pages, which I thought was really cool. And I assume, given that I'm not a writer, but I assume that you have this kind of mapped out, or do you kind of just go on the fly and figure out where it goes?
I'm embarrassed to say that I do kind of go on the fly and figure it out as I go for the most part. I do usually know the very ending, who did it. Not always. With the last book that came out, A Sharp Solitude, I did not know who I would have be the person until about maybe not almost 2/3 of the way through. But with these two books, with The Wild Inside and Mortal Fall, I didn't know how I was going to write all of it, but I knew what the ending, I mean, I didn't even know what the ending would be like, but I knew who did it. Like, I figured that out.
Right,
like,
right.
So I kind of wrote as far as the headlights, but I knew that where the destination was. So it's like I was going to drive to California and it was foggy and I could see, you know, as far as the headlights, and I knew I had to go to California, but I didn't know how I was going to get there or what was happening exactly.
You knew the
way.
destination.
Yeah.
You didn't necessarily know the journey.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And I think it's one of the interesting things. It's like when Dean and I were out yesterday watching a painter. The end result is paint on a canvas, but the way they get to it, there isn't a right way, and there's lots of different
There's lots
ways,
of different, yeah.
which is super interesting. Our son, who was a creative writing major, had a professor who was also a fiction writer, who had what I think is a terrifying way of writing, which is that he would write his entire book and it would be electronic, and he would send it to his publisher for editing, and he would hit delete.
Oh.
And he would then,
That's
when he got the edits, he would retype the entire book, because that way he got to experience it again and see whether it still went the way, which I thought was super crazy.
He could still do that without deleting.
Right, but
I guess open a new file.
And I guess what's his name, who climbs the Half Dome without ropes, to do that with ropes, but he does it with, this is kind of like writing without ropes, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's super interesting.
That would be too frightening for me.
So Jill, we've got a lot of stuff in the chat. I want to make sure that I'm not talking over a bunch of good questions in discussion.
Yeah, we have tons of good questions. A couple of people also had some good comments about your earlier questions, Doug. Lisa mentioned a few decades ago, Richard Dreyfuss might make a good Monty in a movie.
Yeah.
So,
I like that.
And then someone else, Janet, also had mentioned maybe a neat co-author would be Robert Redford. So kind of sensing a theme here.
That would be good. Really great. Yeah.
Yeah. So
You could
those
actually
are the
look like you
two
could
I
be
saw
brother
come
and
through.
sister. You and Robert Redford.
I don't know.
But yeah, let's dive into it. Tuff had a great question. If you're willing to share, Christine, are your characters based on real personal acquaintances or totally fictitious?
That's a great question. So I never base my characters on, anybody that I know or that's fully a character on anyone I know, right? It's fiction. However, I can take little bits and pieces sometimes from multiple people and integrate them into a character because, of course, all of us authors have to on some level draw from what we know. And when we create a fictional person, it has to be from our knowledge base of what we understand and know about people and characters. And that's usually maybe people we've met in our life or watched on TV or seen in movies or even read in other books as well. But there's got to be something there that you're drawing from your own experience. And so I might pluck certain things and writing in a specific area like Glacier National Park and something that, a place that I've lived by since, my family moved here in 1979 and I've lived here a long time. And to write about the locale the way that I do, it ends up being a situation where I interview people that I know and I like people think that they know the veterinarians that I wrote about in some of my books, and they kind of do because they're kind of a hodgepodge of different veterinarians that
Sure.
I know, but they're not all just one veterinarian. And one specific veterinarian actually was on the Wolverine research project, and I talked to him quite a bit about the Wolverine project, which helped me a lot. And then the other there's one of the biologists that was on the Wolverine project. I also checked in and talked to, and a lot of people thought that he was Wolfie, and he wasn't. He came after the fact, and I just talked to him to check in with some facts that I had written. But a lot of people thought he was, and it was.
That's cool.
Sometimes life is just coincidental and strange. It's like, wow. And the other thing about remember the bride who pushed the famous bride who pushed her fiance over the edge of the loop. This happened, for those of you who don't know or don't live around here, this happened, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
And anyway, yeah, it would have to be, but I had already started writing Mortal Fall and picked the loop and everything before that happened. So it's just odd sometimes how life can imitate art. Yeah.
Yeah, that is really interesting. That was such a prominent case, right? In the Flathead, prosecuted by Zeno Bacchus.
Yeah.
Max's son was the prosecutor.
Very prominent.
In Billings, yeah.
But as far as Monty goes, and Gretchen as well, I can't even think of any characteristics that they really have that I would know of. There's nobody that they remind me of.
Does anybody have a good suggestion? I need a good suggestion about who should play Gretchen. So Jill, watch for that.
Okay.
And Emily, I think we're going to do a contest. If you can do a little attendance and give me a contest winner, we're going to give away a copy of the next book in the series, which is available at glacier.org and in our store at the Belton train station. The Weight of Night, which is awesome.
Cool. Awesome.
Back to you, Jill.
A couple folks commented on this method of developing a minor character or like a secondary character into a major character in a subsequent book. So I just wanted to point that out. A couple folks really liked that style and thought that was clever. And in considering Monty in particular, did you find it difficult, or did you have to rewrite parts of his character to kind of make him work as the lead character in Mortal Fall?
That's a great question. Yes, I mean, when I started writing The Wild Inside, I had no idea that I would bring Monty forward. It's not like that was a plan. So I ended up having to tweak things, and honestly, the same with Gretchen. Every character that I've kind of plucked and moved forward, I've had to adjust slightly to make them work as a central character that I could follow through for an entire novel. Because side characters are very different than your main characters. They just are they're very different. And in order to bring them forward, things have to change to some degree, but you want to try and stay you want to stay true to what you've set up as well. So sometimes it makes you almost want to be vague, because, oh, maybe I'll end up bringing this person forward in a later book, so maybe I should be vague about them, but that's not good writing to be vague. So you do have to you have to be specific. And sometimes it was really frustrating, because I would be writing something about Monty that was really going to work for me plot wise and character wise. It was like, but I said this in The Wild Inside, and I can't just so I would end up having to completely rip apart part of a plot in order to make it work, or even go back and reread The Wild Inside about Monty and go, oh, I remembered that incorrectly. He actually was this, and I thought he was this, and I wrote 60 pages that that I'm gonna have to rip out now because I didn't get that right about him. So yeah, it was challenging. By the way, I'm not the first author, obviously, to use that ensemble series method. I have seen it done before and really enjoyed it when Tana French, who writes the Dublin Murder Mystery series, she's not doing it anymore, but she had done it for a certain number of her books and really enjoyed that. So and there's others as well. And so yeah.
Someone
The idea that way.
Someone in the chat had actually commented about Tana French as well and mentioned the Dublin Murder Squad book.
Yeah.
So cool. And I was trying to think back to when you did your first book club with us, Christine. I can't remember if we touched on this, but someone asked the question tonight. Could you kind of touch on the process of speaking for a male character as a female author? Do you have any thoughts on that kind of subject?
I do. So the last few books that I've written have had female protagonists, and so it's been interesting for me to do both and to feel the difference. And one of the things that I feel when I write a male character is actually a little freer, because I'm not male and I'm not familiar with that. So I get to really completely 100% be fictional, I don't have to hold back as much, because I'm really just completely acting, if that makes sense. With my female characters, although it's more comfortable, the voice, because it's female, I feel sometimes like I have to hold back, or I'm shyer a little bit about it, because I almost feel like if I say something maybe a little too risque or this or that, am I exposing something that somebody's going to think is like me, when it's not me? I'm acting, literally your characters are they're not your avatars, they're you're acting.
Right.
But sometimes I feel like when people read, they think that those characters are your avatars, and that they are doing things that you feel or think or want, and that's just not always sometimes it is the case, but most of the time it's not. And so it's tricky. It's a trickier thing to do and to pull off, just in terms of that creativity and that freedom to just go for it. I just feel more free with a male character. Now, yes, there are some challenges. Sometimes it's like you maybe don't get the voice quite right, or you maybe say something that somebody would well, a guy wouldn't think that. Or I have gotten emails like, well, this is way too much thinking for a guy. And or self-analysis or this or that. And I mean, no offense, guys, yeah. I kind of disagree. I kind of think that there's just as much thinking and deep thought and internal thought. It's just that maybe it's not expressed the same way. And so I try and work on my dialogue a lot when I write from the male point of view, so that the thinking is different than what's coming out of the mouth. Whereas some of my female characters, sometimes they say what's on their mind a lot more than maybe a male character might, but it's tricky. It just depends on the character. And so really what I try to do is think that I'm writing a person. Male or female, I'm writing a human being, and that human being has thoughts, emotions, feelings, all of them probably deep and complex, as most of us human beings are. And that's what I try, and that's the angle I try and come from. Like, what are the problems? What are the emotions? What are the psychological elements that this character is dealing with, regardless if they're male or female? And then, once in a while, something very male-ish or very female-ish comes in, like, like a guy's not going to flip his hair in the same way a woman is. But those things are way down the list in terms of prominence for me, in how I think about it.
Sure.
That's cool. Oh.
Someone was wondering.
Might I interject?
Oh, yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Please.
With respect, so I asked the question about the female author speaking for the male character, but you're talking about some people's comments being, gee, well, a man wouldn't analyze in that way or something. No, I think you did a good job in showing the introspection and the different kinds or types of introspection of Adam versus Monty. I mean, they were both analyzing, but their articulation of their conclusions was very different.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dean. Yeah.
Awesome.
That was a really good question too. Yeah.
Yeah, super interesting. Kind of switching gears from character more to place. Janet had a question about how much time, did you spend a lot of time at possible locations in the park for the falls, or maybe other locations that you mentioned in your books? And how did you kind of settle on the areas that you use in your writing?
Different parts of the park affect me differently, as most of you who have been in the park know. I mean, the east side for me is much more haunting, much more desolate in a way, much more, a little more stark, just a little more daunting. There's just something about that, the east. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I think there's this powerful feeling of the east side that is both kind of majesty, and also you feel
Just
really small.
ruggedness and
Right? The east side just can swallow you up. I mean, it's really incredible.
You feel very insignificant.
Very powerful.
And very
different from you're more familiar on the west. Like there's a tree, there's a river, there's a lake.
Yeah.
I get this. You come around in landscapes in the east, and it's like, what is this
And
that I just seen?
that red wine colored rock and the layers and the
ghost forests.
And the white pine, just the distorted shapes and the gnarled branches. Exactly. And so there's just really different feelings from, and with that said, even Kintla and Bowman feel so different from, McDonald Lake and just even those areas. And I've written about Pole Bridge in that area, but I have not written like Kintla or Bowman yet. And I just want, like with Monty.
I like, by the way, that she said yet, which means that there will be more, which I know we're all waiting for. No rush.
But yeah, so with Ted, I wanted him to be really haunted for obvious reasons. For those of you who have read that book, for those of you that haven't, I won't spoil anything, but he is haunted from his childhood in a different way than Monty is haunted. And that haunting comes from experiencing a bear attack that takes place over on that side of the park. And that just felt like the right fit, like that. Like if this is gonna happen, it's gonna happen out there at Old Man Lake, or,
Yeah.
that just felt like the right area for that. And yes, I've been there a lot. And yes, I've been to most places of the park. I mean, there are a few places I haven't been yet, but I've hiked quite a bit and quite extensively over the years. I've been here, like I said, for a long time, and I love the place. And I'm a little bummed that I can't get into it as much this summer, but I'm understanding of the reason why, and that's just what happens as we grow. But I have spent a lot of time in the park and feel very, very blessed to have done that. And the stories that I pick, it's just kind of an envisioning thing. And there were different places I could picture a fall, a push or a happening. But I wanted something that fit Monty's personality, and the loop fit Monty's personality in a way that Old Man Lake fit the whole thing with Ted. And I don't know if I can put my finger on it. It's kind of like a painter. It's just, it felt like the kind of place where Monty he's an orderly kind of character. He wants order. He wants, and I just felt like that loop was like this place that he could kind of set up shop, try and figure it out. And it was close enough to get back and forth to headquarters. And there's nuances, there's things that you have to think about, like, oh my God, every time this character takes a trip, is it going to be realistic if they have to drive all the way over how long that takes, with traffic and in the summer, and what time of the year is this happening? So there's a lot of little factors that go into deciding the setting, the place for the crime or the,
And I thought it was really cool too that you included, you were kind of on the cutting edge. You put game cameras in to do Wolverine research before that was a thing, and that became a thing with the Lynx research that many of you helped us fund over the last 3 years in the park.
I love those pictures
with
you
game
showed
cameras.
me.
And it's really cool. That's year 3 of that this year. And for those of you many of you have said we should get back to doing Wolverine research. We actually have a Wolverine connectivity project that we are currently raising money for next summer that John Waller brought to us. So that's super exciting to be able to do that. And a lot of what Christine talks about, the special places in the park, are special because of the work we get to do at the Conservancy that Christine and her family so generously support, as do many of you. I was interested tonight. I always print out a list of everybody who's registered just to kind of see. And there were 73 people registered tonight. And just you 73 people in lifetime giving have given to the Glacier National Park Conservancy over $470,000.
Wow. That's impressive.
I mean, I can't tell you how much of a game changer that is. That represents the total amount of giving that the Conservancy or in the History Institute back in the day were able to give the park in a whole year. So thank you, because without these kind of conversations and this interaction with each other and this shared commitment to things like Wolverine research, to keeping places wild, to the clean water that's behind Jill, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So thanks to everybody. I thought that was kind of a fun fact for tonight.
Very fun. Yeah. Very cool.
I don't know that we've ever had more activity in the chat room, Jill. It's just amazing.
I know, we're getting so many good questions. I hope we can get to all of them.
And I like this. I like both the suggestion of Meryl Streep for Gretchen. I think that would be very interesting. And I love the comment about how men don't get the chance to like spin their hair when they get out of the pool. So true.
We also had Reese Witherspoon as a suggestion. Yeah, keep the suggestions coming. Those are kind of fun to read.
May I say something?
Yeah.
Sure.
I love how you have the park as your main character for your books. And I love how you pull in whitefish, and I feel like I can, oh, I bet they're from Coram. Oh yeah, I see that's from, the whitefish area. I love that. It's so real.
And
Thank
Sheila,
you,
Sheila, are you joining us from Louisiana today, or are you in the Valley?
Actually, we came back June 1st and I am on Columbia Avenue.
Oh, nice.
So you're missing the humidity is what you're saying.
Oh, I am. And I think it's going to be hotter here next week than it is in Louisiana, though. But I'm hoping to meet Christine and take her to let her sign my books. And I have road passes through August, the third week in August. So if you need to go, give me a holler and I'll be glad to
Gosh, I will
help
take
you go in. Yeah,
That's great.
I'm quick on the finger with the rev.com
There
or
you go.
recreation.com.
Yeah.
And I've, that started to normalize itself for those of you who have been looking. I got on yesterday about 10:30 in the morning and there were tickets available for 3 days in August still. So they're starting to not sell out on the first day. And when the
Oh,
road
okay.
opens, that will, I think, start to normalize more. So
Yeah, yeah.
seems to be working itself out.
However, I will tell everyone this. We went up to Polebridge a couple of days ago. People from the West Side entrance are sending people to Polebridge. Polebridge is basically closed from like 9 to 5. Bowman Lakes parking is closed. Kentless parking is closed. And after the Sun Road opens, that should be better for Polebridge in all areas.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good
Yeah.
suggestion. Thanks,
Yeah.
Sheila. Appreciate
Thank you,
that.
Sheila.
Yeah, it's a different summer for all of us. So have you kind of planned your first big hike yet?
In the process
Yeah.
of doing that.
Okay, where's it gonna be?
I've got a pass just this morning. Luckily, my daughter was on the computer and and she was quicker than me and she got it and
Nice.
I couldn't get it. I think my system is slow. I need to our internet is good, but my computer, I think that matters as well,
I
whether your
think that's the-
computer's fast, and my
Yeah.
computer's getting a little old and she was using a newer one and she got it.
Nice.
So she'll be here still and we'll take her car because it's good for
Yeah, just car.
everyone in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
car. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
for the car.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, so we're trying to plan that and I'm not sure how much snow is up there still, like if for the High Line or Sayi or it might have to be Otokomi or
Ooh, Otokomi's a
something
great
a
one, yeah.
little,
No snow at Huckleberry, I'm told, so.
no snow at Huckleberry or Mount Brown.
No.
Logan Pass is still open, but it should open. I mean, Logan Pass is still closed, but it will probably open in the next couple of days. My neighbor biked it the other day, yesterday.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Jill, I want to get back to the
Yeah.
to the quickly growing chat.
I know. Let's jump back.
Very
in.
exciting.
Warren had a really great question I was excited to get to. He kind of touched on, how authors of series can sometimes get kind of caught up in making the next book more exciting by like taking the action up a notch or making the crimes more horrific, more peril, maybe someone gets more hurt. So he's wondering, how do you kind of walk that line of keeping the books fresh without having them become like totally unbelievable?
That's a great question. And it's one that I really struggle with. It is hard to keep. I mean, you want a page turner, right? You want to keep people turning the pages. And sometimes I do have a tendency to like rest my like, because I like to do the psychological thing and really dig in with my characters. And sometimes those descriptions can slow things down. I mean, for some people, my books they would hate them because it's, oh my gosh, too much description, too much this, too much that, too much thinking, too much, and so that does exist. And some people like to just kind of skid across Teflon a little bit more. Nothing against that. That's just what they prefer. It's just subjective reading, just like what you like to watch, what you like to listen to, what you like to read. And so I do struggle with that. Like what's the right mix, and when do I need to add something to get the adrenaline going back a little bit, or trying to juice it up a little bit, or what can I do to add an element of danger that makes it feel like there's more risk for my character or more things at stake. And it's hard because nobody likes to think of bad things happening. Like we don't go through life wanting to get a flat tire on the way to work and then run into somebody we're going to get in a huge fight with, or We don't go to get a drink at a bar to get in a bar fight, like with Adam. You know, we don't think that way. So you have to force yourself to think about like, what's a bad thing that can happen? Like, what is something that's going to make my character squirm? So, you know, you could take something as boring as having a family reunion, like in this book, like, and how do I make that so that that is not just like, okay, this is kind of sleepy and boring. What is it that's going to up the psychological suspense for my character and therefore my reader? And yeah, it's a challenge. I've really struggled with it, honestly, with a book that I'm writing right now. I'm really, really struggling with that. So it's a great question.
And I think I mean, I have been disappointed by some authors. CJ Box comes to mind. He did that by just they're just too graphic, and they're just, you know, he felt like surprise had to be something you really had to turn your face away.
And it doesn't have to be that, but
right.
And the other thing is that it has to be organic to the story. So you can't just have like, oh, I need a dead body, or I need another murder, or I need, you know, I need somebody to ram my character off the road, you know, unless it makes sense to the story. And so that's really challenging, because readers can spot it when you're just plopping something in there to try and up that tension. And it just, I don't like that. I really like it to be organic to the plot. And so it's a struggle if it's not.
Yeah.
And speaking of organic to the plot, organic to our plot, Emily, when you have a contest winner, please blurt out said winner, and we will make that so by sending a copy of The Weight of Night, which is the next book in the series. It's marvelous. Again, you get to learn about a character you've met, who you then get to learn more about in this extraordinary book. And then the final book so far is Sharp Solitude, which is, I mean, they're all great. This one surprised me the most. I thought this was just what you did with this book in terms of from beginning to end, that was just remarkable. So all of them are great. This is a must summer read. It's on the shelves, as I said, at the Belton Depot store and also at glacier.org. So you can get online and get that today.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. And I just actually ran our giveaway winner picker thing. And our winner is Warren Gartner.
Excellent. Warren, awesome. That's
So
terrific.
congrats, Warren.
All right. We will send you the copy, Warren. Down to beautiful Victor.
I hope you like it, Warren. Hope you enjoy it.
Do you have any space on the bookshelf behind you there, dude?
Make it.
We have another question from Gina. Shout out to my awesome mother-in-law. She asked about Nathan in particular. Did you think about resolving his story when you started writing, or did you kind of decide early on that you would leave that unresolved?
That was something that I was unsure about for a large part of the book. And then I just decided that not everything had to be resolved. And there's a lot in this story, you know, the whole Wolverine studies and the trapping and then the school and all the dynamics with that, and Monty and his childhood with Nathan, and then Monty and Lara. And I really felt like if there was one thing that I would leave unsolved, it should be that, because A, I didn't know how to solve it, and B, I mean, I didn't know how to solve it at that point, and B, it just seemed like a good way to hook people to read the next book, because it does get solved in the next book.
Yeah.
And I knew I had confidence that I would figure it out by then.
Yeah.
And I didn't pre-authorize this in advance, but I believe that Christine would be happy to sign book plates
Absolutely.
for us.
Absolutely,
So,
of
so
course.
if folks want to either email Emily@glacier.org or just put it in the chat, we will get blank book plates to Christine Carbo, and she'll inscribe them and we'll get them to you. So please just put those in the chat, and thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
Bethany would like to know how much time you spent out at the Outlaw's Nest. She put a little smiley face next to that. But she said, in all seriousness, she'd imagine the hardest part of your book to research was the illegal fur trade and illegal trapping. So she's wondering, how did you go about that research?
Oh, the internet is a great thing for writers. My grandmother actually was an author, mostly young adult literature, and she wrote on a typewriter, and without an internet, and I just can't even imagine. Like, I can't even imagine just typing away, and and not having just the ability to look something up. And it's not all off the internet. I mean, that's not a completely trustworthy thing for authors all the time to just nab whatever they could, because there's a lot of conflicting stuff on the internet, as you know. So you try and go to reputable sources. Luckily, because I am local to this area, I do know people that I can call upon to ask questions about I talked to those researchers and whatnot who worked with the wolverines, and they were also able to fill me in about what's going on with trapping and all that. So mostly it came from a combination of that and the internet. Yeah. And you guys have read The Wolverine Way, right?
Yep.
That was great. That gave me so much information.
Yeah, that's an incredible. He was one of our early book club.
Yeah, he actually even discusses trapping in that book too.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about it from that as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Some good book club crossover right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Organic to the plot.
Yeah. Cool. David has an interesting question. He mentioned one of the strongest parts of your book is your understanding of these family dynamics, and particularly the ins and outs of teenage therapy ranches. He mentions this has been a huge problem in Utah. So he's wondering, how did you go about learning about those issues? Was there any research to that you spent some time on?
Okay, so yes, I researched those schools, particularly in Utah, and was horrified at some of the things that I found. There were some things in Tennessee as well that horrified me, which wasn't so much the Western thing, obviously, but the Western phenomena really caught my attention. This idea that, so many families think that they can kind of send their children out west to, the mountains and the fresh air, which we do know is therapeutic. I mean, we do know that spending time out in the woods is hugely therapeutic and really good. But there's these schools, and a lot of them are good, but there's a lot of them that aren't good, and they're not regulated. So there's no regulation. And so it just seemed like a good way to really dig in with a story, and since this book was written, I mean, there's been schools that have been shut down up in Eureka. And so we have some excellent schools here. The Montana Academy is excellent from what I hear. So, I actually wrote in my in my
acknowledgements.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Acknowledgements page, that this is not about, this is no statement about some of the local schools around here, because it was a fictional school. I made it up, but it was based on some of the research that I discovered. And I did read about some children that had hung themselves at these schools and committed suicide. And it just kind of broke my heart thinking about it. And I wanted to tackle the topic.
Yeah.
And yeah, sad as it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of, fiction is a great way to introduce a lot of people to feeling more comfortable about those kinds of topics.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I think it's an important role that I'm glad that you have chosen to help play, because I think it's a good on-ramp for people to be able to have that discussion with their kids,
yeah,
with their siblings, things
yeah.
like that. So feels a little bit more accessible when it's in
Yeah.
that kind of format. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's cool.
Christine, could you kind of dive in real quick into the editing process and what that was like for The Wild Inside and Mortal Fall specifically?
Interesting comment about the mudman.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a phenomena here too, right?
Yeah.
And I will get to the editing thing, but also just the whole trafficking thing in general. It's not just sex trafficking. There's using younger children for just labor, and there's also, and it's not just schools. There's in some states, they literally have these like homeschool situations where your children aren't even necessarily just in the home with mom and dad. It's more like they're grouping up in certain areas and calling them homeschools, and then ending up doing the same thing as some of the therapeutic schools with the abuse and all that. And so, yeah, I've read a lot about it, and it's really kind of sad, frightening. But editing. So I think that editing is really challenging because you can edit something endlessly. I mean, the words that you put down, I call it moving deck furniture around. You can move it around constantly. Oh, I'll put that in the front. No, I think I'll put that back here on this, this end of the sentence. And it's so easy to slip away from active voice and go into passive voice. And it's just endless things to edit. And I will tell you that every single one of these books that has been published has been edited extensively. It has been read and reread by people that know me, that help me read, by the publishing companies, by editors, by copy editors, but there's a mistake or two or three in every single one of these books. And the human mind just does not pick everything up when you're reading it. And, especially when it's yourself, but, even to have like copy editors who are trained to not get involved in the plot, they're just trained to they still miss things. And ultimately I have to take responsibility for all the mistakes in these books, and I do. But it's just crazy. And I get emails about those mistakes, and I apologize for all of them.
Well, thank you for your apology, Christine. You do not need to apologize.
I think we probably got time for one more question, Jill.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Okay, we're getting lots of book plate requests. Thank you, everyone. We'll get your book plates to you.
It does take up a fair amount in the chat, so we have to
Yes.
scroll down, which is so while you're doing that, Jill, I'm gonna ask for a favor for folks who are on tonight. Believe it or not, it's already June, about to be July. We do not have a book club next month because it's Backpackers Ball. We hope you're all registered for Backpackers Ball. If you're not, backpackersball.com. One of the amazing auction items that you are going to be able to bid on is compliments of our dear friend Christine Carbo, who has agreed to donate books and go on a hike with a group of successful bidders. You'll have to go along with me, which is the downside to this, so as a discount for that. And hike actually to the loop. We'll get you up to Logan so that you don't have to worry about shuttles, and you get to hike with Christine, have lunch at Granite Park Chalet, get autographed copies of her books. So that will be at Backpackers Ball. And as a result, it's getting close to the end of the year. And I'm coming too. Yep. So we'll be together. I need suggestions for books for next year, but we'll only have 11 available for next year, because if I can convince a certain author, I think we need to just keep going in the series. Don't you? right? Okay, thumbs up. Very good. All right, so Jill, back to you for a closing question.
Okay, I was scanning, trying to find any that I may have skipped over, but there's just so many comments. Thank you everyone for being so engaged today. It's amazing. So I'm just going to end on Melissa's. Melissa actually hasn't read any of the books yet, so I'm really glad she decided to join us anyway. But she asked if she should be worried about her animals in these books or if they're going to make her cry. So I don't be scared, Melissa, but if you guys have any encouragement for Melissa to read your books, I'm sure she'd love to hear it.
I do, and I want to hear from Melissa before you go. Melissa, you said your new series. What is your favorite series?
Oh, boy. Well, I was recently introduced to Louise Penny's Gamache series.
Yes.
So I'm all the way up on those and love them, love the characters and the development and the relationships, as well as the mysteries too. I used to like the Robert Parker books, but then he sort of got very minimal speaking. The early ones are really good. Dick Francis.
There you go.
They aren't exactly series, but, and then non-mystery stuff too.
Well, there are certainly so many out there, which is great, but for my money, there aren't any out there that match for me. And I think it is because
That's
of,
so nice.
you know, because of the writing, the writer, and the place, right? That's why we're all here tonight, is because we have a love for Glacier Park. And you know, these books really share the majesty of the place. And it's just such a treat to be able to be with you and to actually be with you. It's really great. It's so nice to be able to be doing more of that. And I will agree with the New York Times, who said about one of her offerings, stunning descriptions, more please. So I will agree with the Times, and I look forward to more times with all of you in future book clubs. We'll be back at it in August. We're going to do a little bit of a retro. We're going to do Mary Reinhardt's book, which she wrote through Glacier Park, and her grandson, who is her current kind of editor, will be joining us, since of course Mary Reinhardt won't be able to. So we'll look forward to seeing you then. And Christine Carbo, thank you very much for your friendship and support.
Thank you for having me. Thank you all for being here. I really enjoyed this, and great questions, and yeah, I just love it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doug and Christine. It was wonderful and so great to kind of meet you. I hope to run into you in town.
There you go.
I hope so. Yeah.
Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.